It's been 12 years since the Man of Steel has had a theatrical solo movie, with that being, well, the Man of Steel. But with him making his triumphant return to the big screen with James Gunn's Superman, I figured now would be the perfect time to share my general thoughts on my adventures with Superman and what I hope to see in future seasons. My Adventures is the first solo Superman cartoon in over 20 years, as after Superman the Animated Series, all animated series that featured him had him as either part of an ensemble or a guest star. Yet while we needed to wait 2 decades for a new Superman cartoon, Batman would get several in that time, which I'm totally not salty about, especially since Wonder Woman herself still hasn't even gotten an animated show to this day.
This is fine.
But everything changed back in 2021 when it was announced that Superman would finally be headlining an animated series once again, as the show would center around a young Clark Kent who'd be going into the role of Superman while embarking on adventures alongside Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen. I couldn't wait until the show came out, and when it did, I was not disappointed at all, as My Adventures perfectly captures the essence of who Superman is, along with delivering compelling stories about finding your place in the world and overcoming adversity. While Superman the Animated Series is still an iconic show I enjoy, I feel like My Adventures is an improvement upon it in almost every way. The trio of Clark, Lois, and Jimmy are more compelling to watch, Clark and Superman feel like 2 separate characters, and the show actually commits itself to the closest romance. There's only one area I'm inclined to say that the animated series does better, though I'll talk about that later in the video. Now, as I mentioned, this series understands who Superman is, with that being someone who uses his powers to help others simply because he can. One of my favorite scenes in the show was when he took the time to help a little girl find her parents after getting separated from them. This moment warmed my heart, as it's just one of many examples from the series that showcase how much the crew understands the character. Between Snyder making Superman into this boring, emotionless messiah figure, along with Injustice and Amazon The Boys popularizing the evil Superman archetype, watching Superman be Superman was just refreshing to see. But this show not only gives us a great Superman, but it also gives us a great Clark Kent. This is a version of Clark who has grown up suppressing his powers to seem normal, with him being very honest and dorky, but also carrying a lot of anxiety. That anxiety ties into another big aspect of the series that I love seeing when it comes to stories about Superman, him feeling like an outsider among humanity. In the first 2 seasons, we get to see Clark struggle with controlling his powers, be afraid of not being accepted by those around him, and how he longs to find someone else like him so that he feels less lonely in the world. It's an aspect of the character I find fascinating, as it highlights that despite others seeing him as this all-powerful being, he has a very relatable struggle of just wanting to be accepted. The changes made for Lois and Jimmy in this show are also great, and I like how they're just as important as Clark, with them even getting their own storylines. For Lois, she still has that classic Lois Lane energy of recklessly leaping into danger to get a story, along with her sharp wit. But they also showcase her struggling with her insecurities. This is a Lois that doesn't start off as an ace reporter with accolades, but rather as a rookie who's trying to prove herself and wants to be taken seriously. Her relationship and romance with Clark is adorable, as Clark is the first person to fully put his faith in her skills, with their chemistry being off the charts. While I do still think that them becoming a couple happened a bit too fast and could have been held off till at least season 2 or even the season 1 finale, their fantastic chemistry allows me to overlook it lightly. Though if you want to hear my more in-depth thoughts about their relationship, you can watch the video I made about them a few years back. As for Jimmy, this is easily my new favorite incarnation of the character, with it being unique from previous versions, as he's now a conspiracy theorist with a deep passion for investigating the supernatural and paranormal. Unlike Lois and Clark, Jimmy is a character I never had strong feelings about, despite being a pretty iconic figure in the Superman mythos. While I find him to be alright in the comics and adaptations that featured him, he was never a character I gave too much thought to. But the show rectifies that by not only making him Clark's best friend from college, but also treating him as an equal in regards to Lois and Clark. Typically, those two are the ace reporters of the Daily Planet, while Jimmy is their sidekick who dreams of becoming as successful as they are. But by having all three of them start from the bottom, it helps Jimmy not feel like a side character though. This is further prevented by having Jimmy know that Clark is Superman, thus he's more involved in the story. Jimmy's friendship with Clark is incredibly wholesome as the two constantly look out for each other, with Jimmy helping Clark realize that he doesn't need to be alone or feel ashamed of being an alien. Superman Best Friend is a title that's synonymous with Jimmy, but this is the first time I ever believed it. I also love his relationship with Kara, who's also another fantastic character, with their blooming romance being far more compelling than the one from the CW Supergirl series. But you can't have a Superman show without utilizing his iconic rogues gallery, which yeah, this is the area that Superman the Animated Series arguably does better in some regards. Now to the show's credit, they do have some solid villains. Having General Lane be one of the villains at the start was a great decision that highlights how the show done its homework while also further tying Lois into the story. And having Amanda Waller be a part of his cabal made perfect sense, as while she tends to be more often associated with Batman, it makes sense to have her be a villain in a Superman show, given how she's a character who seeks to protect the world from beings like him that she views as threats. Though the best villain of the series so far is definitely Brainiac, with him being even better than his animated series counterpart. I love how sadistic and callous of a character he is, with his twisted father-daughter relationship with Kara making him even more compelling. He also has one of the hardest lines in the show.
I ripped Krypton from the heavens and cast it into hell.
But excluding them, along with Lex, Mxyzptlk, and maybe Parasite, the rest of the villains range from okay to meh due to a variety of factors. For one, the show doesn't take the time to flesh most of them out, such as giving us their origin stories to help explain why they're even villains to begin with. Instead, they're just villains made for Superman to fight with only the barest bone understanding of their characters, as they either just want money, hate Superman, or both. Atomic Skull and Damage are two prominent examples of this, as they're introduced as Waller's newest weapons to use against Superman, with them having a hatred for him, but the show never gives us any kind of explanation as to why. It doesn't help matters that the secondary villains don't have many appearances in the show, thus we're robbed of seeing how their dynamic with Superman differs from the other, along with learning more about them. Season 2 reveals that Heatwave and Livewire are a couple, yet we have no context at all as to how they even began a relationship. The last we saw of Heatwave, she was escaping from Waller's facility with the rest of the villains from season 1, so the fact we didn't get to see how this happened makes me feel like we missed out on a pretty interesting story. The quick tangent, I'm still confused as to why Heatwave is even in this show. She's not even a Superman villain, she's a Flash villain. If they wanted to give Superman a five-theme villain, Volcano was right there. This lack of focus on the secondary villains come off as the show choosing to prioritize the main leads and more major villains over them, which I do understand as they are the more important characters. But the lack of time spent with the other villains is part of an overarching problem with the show, in which they only get 10 episodes per season. This results in not only them being underutilized, but also the other employees at the Daily Planet, and makes the pacing of the story feels rushed at times. The first halves of season 1 and season 2 are well paced, but then with only 5 episodes left, they kind of start racing towards the finish line with barely any time to breathe, with the second season especially being guilty of this. Some shows are able to be well paced with only 10 episodes, but it's definitely something that this show struggles with, as they'll try to do a bit too much. There are also a few other gripes I have with the villains, such as how most of them are tech based, with Livewire being the only proper meta-human so far. While I understand the thematic storytelling at play in which Clark finds himself fighting villains who are utilizing Kryptonian tech, having most of them use tech not only make the villains feel less diverse, but also doesn't do his rogues gallery justice. Take a look at Silver Banshee. In the comics, she's a magic-themed villain who serves as a unique threat to Superman due to magic being one of the few things that he's vulnerable to, which also makes her stand out from his other villains who are more sci-fi. But in the show, they decide to just give her a helmet that shoots sonic screams, which feels like a downgrade from the comics. And that's not the only downgrade, as most of the villains' design leave a lot to be desired, as instead of looking even remotely similar to a comic book character when in costume, they look like they just stepped out from Voltron Legendary Defenders due to them wearing those dull-looking Voltron suits. There are some solid redesigns such as Parasite, Brainiac, and especially Mix's Spitlick, since for him, they managed to capture the core spirit of him being this otherworldly impish figure. But I'm so disappointed by how most of Task Force X look, as they don't even look like comic book villains. I even asked a friend of mine who's big into comics but hasn't watched the show yet to identify which of these characters are Silver Banshee, Heatwave, and Livewire. And do you know what happened? She guessed wrong all 3 times. She thought that this was Silver Banshee, this was Heatwave, and this was Livewire, which further reflects how much these designs fall flat. Season 3 will be introducing brand new villains, along with Lex being more in the forefront as an antagonist, which I'm excited to see, but I am hoping that the villains who haven't gotten much focus, such as Energang, are given some more spotlight. As for the future of the series, there's a lot I want to see before it reaches its conclusion. Given that the first 2 seasons took time to flesh out Clark and Lois's past and their relationships with their parents, I'm hoping for something similar with Jimmy in season 3. Why does he have such a deep passion for conspiracies and the oddities of the world? Are his parents supportive of his endeavors? Those questions are currently blank pages that I would love to see filled in. Another big aspect that I want to see them address is the consequences of Kara's actions when she was forced to destroy civilizations under Brainiac's control. Along with exploring the guilt that she would be feeling, I think this would be a great way to introduce characters like Lobo and Maxima. For Lobo, he could be a bounty hunter sent to retrieve Kara to take accountability for her actions. As for Maxima, borrowing from her New 52 origins in which she was friends with Kara with her later developing romantic feelings for her, I think there's a great story you can tell in which similar events occurred, but when Kara was forced to destroy Maxima planet, she now seeks revenge for the destruction of her home. But besides new villains, I would love to see more heroes begin to pop up in Metropolis. It's easy to forget since it's something most adaptations featuring Superman rarely touch upon, but Superman isn't the only hero of Metropolis, as it features other prominent heroes such as Steel, Guardian, and Black Lightning. They're already sowing the seeds of Steel with John Henry Irons in the show, so it'd be nice to see others as well. And since we'll be getting a spin-off set in this universe centered on Jessica Cruz as the Green Lantern, this gives me hope that we can start getting cameos of other DC heroes outside of Metropolis meeting Superman. There's also a few other things I would love to see from the Superman mythos in the show, such as the Legion of Superheroes, Krypto, and Red Kryptonite, just to name a few. While I may have critiques with the show, I still adore my adventures with Superman, as it's the kind of Superman show we've been severely lacking. I can't wait to see what's in store for the future of the series, and hopefully, so long as the new Superman movie is a success, this show will be allowed to finish telling its story. But what are your thoughts on my adventures with Superman, and what do you hope to see in future seasons? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell to be notified when I make a new video. Until next time, catch you later.